and
Oddballs.
Hey Oddballs, I'm your host Jensen, and welcome to episode 138. I just wanted to start out today by saying there are 2 trigger warnings for both stories today. I think the first one is just because there's a wound involved, and the second one is about death connections from natural causes and poor mental health. So if neither of those stories sound really great to you, feel free to skip over this episode. But before we get to those stories, I want to say happy birthday to you February 19th babies. You can stick around to listen to this part. I promise you'll have plenty of time to turn the episode off after this. And yeah, we're going to be reading from the birthday book. So here we go.
Happy birthday.
February 19th people value independence of thought and action and may exhibit a near compulsive need to impose a stamp of their individuality on everything they undertake. Although they are undoubtedly sensitive to the needs of other people, they usually direct their concern more towards humanity as a collective entity, rather than toward individuals. Like the rather global quality of their empathy, their powers of perception are conditioned by the predilection to rational thought, and they therefore cultivate a rather lofty air of impartiality. Yet despite impersonal projection of their empathetic insights, February 19th people nurture deep aspirations to affect progress and contribute to the greater good. For this reason, they often make outstanding social and care workers who do not allow themselves to become ineffective through over-identification with their clients, as well as gifted environmental campaigners. The more artistically inclined among them, and many have a mystical side, possess the inviolable potential to delight and inspire others with the power and focus of their performances. Because they are able to balance empathy and rational idealism, these people typically exude a sense of stability. They make responsible and supportive parents, particularly if they are women, whose natural sense of authority, combined with their respect for individual opinions, draws others to them. On the other hand, their quest for knowledge and need to be challenged can lead them to take increasingly hair-raising risks, bolstered as they are by their self-confidence and faith in their own abilities. Their virtues are problem-solving, energetic, global thinking. Their vices are addictive, suppressing, and personal. All right, happy birthday again, you February 19th babies. Those of you who are opting out on the stories, go ahead and click off. Thank you for listening, and we're going to go ahead and move on to stories.
This comes from Wibbles4600 on Reddit.
I lived in Union, Maine for the first 14 years of my life. It was a beautiful blue farmhouse with a huge basement, backyard, and blueberry field. I had been hearing some strange sounds coming from the basement, and my mom never wanted me to go down there. I let my mind get the best of me, and I decided to go down one day. My mom wasn't home, and I was there with my dog. So, little me took my dog down there with me, so I wasn't scared. I walked down the 13 stairs to the basement, and my feet hit the floor, my dog right on my tail. When you walk down the stairs, you can go left or right. If you turn left, there's a little room that was used as a bedroom for my older brother. If you turn right, that was the garage area where we would bring cars in to work on them, along with the wood stove in the boiler room. Stacked along the wall was nothing but wood we would use for heat. I remember walking around the area barefoot, and I stepped on a nail. I screamed in pain and wobbled my way up the stairs and tried to pull it out when my mom came home and found me in a pool of blood. We bandaged up my foot, and I was sent outside to play while my mom spent the afternoon sweeping up the basement. A few days later, I wanted to go down again, so I did. Once again, I brought my dog with me. This time, I made sure to wear shoes. I made it over to the boiler room when I heard a small moan. That's when my dog started to freak out. He was growling, with the hair standing up on the back of his neck. He was as nervous as I was. I panicked and once again ran back upstairs. I spent days wanting to figure out what was down there, but gave up for a while. One night, I was lying in bed, and you know when you're almost asleep and you get jumped awake? Well, I jumped, and when I did, I kicked my dog in the process and fell onto the ground, unable to move. The only thing I could move was my eyes, and they darted across the room in a corner I was always scared of. There, stood in that corner, was a tall black shadow. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I started to sweat as it walked over to me, and it stopped right at my bedside. I looked at the clock, and it said 2:07 a.m. This is when my body awoke. I looked back at my clock, and it said 7:02 a.m. I was asleep the whole time. I told my mom about it, but of course no one believed me. I wanted so bad to know what this thing was. A few weeks later, I had just come home from school, and my mom wasn't home. So I didn't do my homework, as kids do, and I wanted to play. My neighbor was home, so I decided to have him come outside and play with me in my basement. This is when things took a dark turn. He brought a Ouija board. We played around on it at the table downstairs when a pin spun around and hit me in the gut. He laughed and thought I did it on purpose. When we both let go of the board, that's when the lights started to flicker and the board flipped up on its side. He threw it into the wood stove, but it wouldn't catch fire. That's when we knew we needed to get out of there. We started to run up the stairs when I was pushed down them. He didn't stop until he was at the top, when he finally noticed. Things finally started to calm down and went back to normal. My dreams kept repeating themselves, and I eventually sought out therapy. There are plenty more stories I want to share, so I will continue posting them. Okay, so first of all, I want to hear more stories that you have because this one's kind of crazy. And it's interesting that like your mom wouldn't want you to go downstairs because why? I mean, it could just be because it's a garage and obviously you stepped on a freaking nail, which that in itself makes me cringe so bad because it takes me back to my childhood where I stepped on a Christmas bulb that was in a bag and I cut my foot open really bad. And then I had to go to the emergency room and then they stuck the shot of numbing stuff right into my wound and it was the most traumatic thing ever. And so that's my takeaway from the story is that I really hate it for that reason and I hope your foot is okay. Anyhow, little rant there, but I wonder how old this blueberry farm and farmhouse is because maybe it's like a previous owner that was there who doesn't want you there. That's a very good possibility. I don't know if it's super negative, but I know there are a lot of negative connotations with Ouija boards, but you know, I really don't think they're that bad unless you're like my sister who looks at everything that you can talk to with the spiritual world negative. So then that would be negative. But a Ouija board in itself, I think is okay. That's my own personal opinion. But the fact that it went on its side and then you threw it into the fire and it didn't freaking catch on fire is really scary. So either the spirit that is there is very angry that you're there, or this is more than just a spirit. Now, I also want to know why this kid brought over a Ouija board. So now I definitely need more stories and I need a lot more depth to this because my gears in my brain are working and I want to know why. Why did they bring a Ouija board over? And it was kind of funny because I thought this story was going to be like, oh, they were coming outside to play with me. And then it goes in the basement, which is like every horror movie's plot, right? Like, I don't know. I guess the thing is I want to know why this kid had a Ouija board to bring over in the first place. Have you told them about the stories? Did they have things going on? There are so many questions here left unanswered. And yeah, I'm really curious if this person has posted more and I really want to hear more. I'm very curious as to what your comments are. And also about like the sleep paralysis part. What the heck was that? I mean, I'm not going to try to skip over the black figure or anything, but the Ouija board part is what really stood out here, aside from the fact of the nail in the foot. Yeah, that one, that's just my own little personal traumatic experience in life that makes my spine tingle. But anyhow, your comments, what are they? And let's go ahead and move on to the next story.
This comes from Sophia Grace 10 on Reddit.
I have had repetitive incidents within my dreams since I moved to this apartment a year and a half ago. And every time this happens, within 72 hours, there is a death connected to someone important in my life. 2/3 have been older women, if it matters. So, the first time I had this lady appear in my dream, she was like right in my face and woke me up from a deep sleep in the middle of the night. But even now, those details are burned in my memory and spooked me enough that I moved my bed across the room the next day. I thought maybe it may have had to do something with where the bed was. But within a day or two, I found out my sibling's grandma had passed away. I tossed off this connection until it happened again a few months later. For important context here, I typically go into work at 3 a.m. the 3 days a week I do work. This day, I was having an incredibly vivid dream where I ended in a dark bathroom with this woman appearing out of nowhere and approaching me. Once she got close, again I was jolted awake. Only I was over an hour late for work because somehow my sleep app with my alarm was turned off. The app marked itself with me waking up at 1:30 a.m., half an hour before my alarm should have went off. It was the exact same woman from a few months earlier, but I hadn't made the connection quite yet. To make up the hours, I went in on Saturday and had a friend take me to work. She was unaware of it at the time, but when she was leaving her family farm to come get me, she had heard the shot from her brother's self-inflicted death, and the emergency vehicles passing her were going there. I moved my bed again, spooked by this, and I was hoping I wouldn't encounter this lady again. I'm fairly sure I'm sensitive to these things, but outside of this apartment, I have never seen this lady. But my building is maybe 10 years old. And for about 3/4 of the year, there was no sign of her until early Tuesday morning. This time, I had a weird dream of sitting in my work's break room that has a full wall of windows, but they were dark and you could see nothing out of them. Someone said something about someone approaching dressed like a certain book villain in all pink who was approaching the building. But yet again, you could see nothing. All of a sudden, there was some banging on the door to get into the building. It's right outside the break room and like a 5x5 hallway, and the door has a window. Rather than going to answer it, I was trying to hide between the doorway, going that way, and the wall of windows. Then suddenly I saw something move while I was hiding, and I was face to face in the window. Except it was the same lady, just this time, as someone had said, she was wearing pink instead of the black I've seen her in. And again I was startled awake as she just waved at me. Then, on Friday morning, I was told before work, a guy friend of mine said his grandma passed away, and he wasn't sure exactly when it was, but her funeral was today. I'm curious as to what this is, if anything. This is far from the only thing I've experienced in this apartment, or within my life in general. This isn't the first story where I've heard someone kind of predicting people's deaths without predicting people's deaths. There was this one person that I remember reading their story, and it was something along the lines of either they smelled certain smells. I feel like one of them, they smelled cookies, and then they smelled embalming fluid, and then they smelled smoke at one point. I feel like it was something like that. And if someone remembers what episode that was, put that in the comments, because I would love to go back to that. But this one's just a little little step further and very terrifying. It makes me wonder multiple things. One, is this person cursed? Did someone send some kind of spirit to them to be like, hey, this is gonna mess your life up? I don't know. That's pretty harsh and very messed up, but maybe. Or maybe this is some interesting gift that this scary lady comes and kind of warns you about a death that's going to happen, but like, unfortunately, it's terrifying. The last one definitely links up with the coworker who had their grandma pass away because this person was in their dream at work in their dream. So I'm not sure really where to go with this. I find it weird that it's starting in this apartment, and clearly it has nothing to do with you moving the bed. So hopefully your bed is not heavy, because that sounds like a lot of bed moving you're going to have to do. But I want to know what the other stories that you have are, because if you have like a really strong connection to the paranormal, then maybe that's really all this is. But it's so spooky because it's this spooky lady who's coming to do that. Like what I'm picturing, and I know this is so far off, but I'm picturing Insidious. And like, that's the kind of lady that I'm picturing who's coming in these dreams and doing this spooky stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, death is not a beautiful thing, but I mean, I guess it could be for some. I don't know, but maybe this lady represents death and you have some kind of ability, and that's really all she is just a representation of death, and the scene that is around you is hinting at whom it's going to be. It's really morbid, really, when you start going into the details of it, but I'm not really sure how to turn this off either. You could just, I don't know if you're into prayer, if that'll work for you. You could try and cleanse your space and cleanse your apartment, and I don't know, say things out loud just to get it to stop. This is a spooky one. This one really makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because the fact that there's a correlation between death and this person's dreams, I don't like that. And I'm really curious to see if anybody has any idea of what this person can do to either help them stop seeing this or what this could be. I'm kind of at a loss, because this one just spooks me out. This one really just spooks me out, and I'm not a fan, but I'm not. So anyhow, if you have a story like either story today, let me know. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And well, it's an odd world after all. Oddballs. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to leave 5 stars or thumbs up on whatever podcast platform you listen on. If you have any comments for this episode, comment below or head over to Instagram and comment on this episode's preview. To submit a story or for more information, go to itsanoddworldafterall.com.